Hello everyone, and welcome back to Total Warhammer 3. I'm Lord Farrand, here with another guide. This time we're going to be covering the Chaos God Khorne, the Blood God. You know, skulls for the Skull Throne type thing. So Khorne is basically the god of violence, untamed violence and fighting, of the Chaos Gods. Considered the strongest of the Chaos Gods in the sense that it's very, very powerful, but also the faction doesn't like magic, which is quite interesting too for a Warhammer faction. So anyway, the three main mechanics here is you have skulls, which you get from fighting battles, raising settlements, and claiming skull piles. Drawn to destruction, you can kind of automatically colonize as you conquer things, or you can spend skulls at a very high price to get them. And bloodletting, your units get stronger and stronger every battle, but they degrade if you don't fight for a while. So let's jump into it. So the faction here is Exiles of Khorne, led by Skarbrand the Exile. Interestingly, a kind of kicked out demon of Khorne. Faction effects, and this is a very powerful one. Armies replenish in foreign territory. This really helps with your ability to keep an onslaught going and just keep invading, and doing damage. Uh, Other Khornate factions don't like you, which makes sense because this faction fights even among itself, basically. You get extra movement range if you raise a settlement, and the Lord effect is he gets extra movement distance after winning a battle, and recruiting units when an enemy or raised territory is cheaper for this Lord. So let's jump right into it, and we'll go over the starting location. Okay, here we go. So this is where Skarbrand's starts. The campaign starts in the lair of Infernus, which is a nice level 2 settlement in a kind of a volcano, which is kind of interesting. You start out at war with the people immediately to your south, but also way up here, you're at war with the, I believe you're at war with the Slaanesh faction up there. Yep, you're at war with the main Slaanesh faction. Basically, Khorne and Slaanesh hate each other, as do Nurgle and Teach. Um, but other than Slaanesh, the other two Chaos Gods get along fairly well with Khorne factions, so you're probably going to want to be friends with them, at least until you come around to killing them, because in the end, Khorne comes around to killing everybody. So, they're pretty good. You can unlock Warhounds and Furies from the start, or you can upgrade it to get Fleshhounds. I found Fleshhounds better than Warhounds, but that was my preference. One's more expensive than the other. You have a unique settlement, unique building here in the settlement. If you get to level 5, same as the other Chaos Gods, basically better relations and more allegiance points. You can, however, build a garrison building in this capital, and honestly, from my couple attempts of playing Khorne, including one full campaign and one almost complete, I found it was not a bad idea to throw a garrison down in the capital at the beginning. Just because Khorne has a very interesting style of gameplay, and we'll get into a little bit more of that, but it's quite possible you'll have rebellions in your land attacking it, and so just not losing your main capital is a pretty good choice. Otherwise, you could probably take this one, which enables attrition, increases hero recruit rank, gives corruption, and gives you some money. The other options, control. I didn't find I really needed this in the capital. It also kind of doesn't really fit Khorne in the sense that you want combat. Oddly enough, it gives more control when an enemy lord is present, and this effect applies to a lot of them. You get more income when an enemy is present. This one doesn't have one of those, which makes it a pretty solid one in general. It gives you more income from post-battle loot. If you're playing on the higher difficulties than normal, this is one that you probably want to build just so that you get more money at the beginning. And over here, you just get income from all buildings. Of course, as you can see, 40 income is not a lot. Khorne doesn't really make money from buildings. Can make money, but it's mainly about war and post-battle loot. However, this one is nice in the sense that it reduces enemy leadership, making it very powerful on defense. It's a little odd that Khorne, out of most of the Chaos factions, is both better on offense and defense. It's kind of anything in between it struggles with. If you've played Nurgle at all, you'll kind of know the feeling of periods, cycles. Nurgle's all about cycles. Khorne kind of plays a little bit like that in my experience. You have periods of immense violence and strength, and you kind of have to wait, build back up, or wait for enemies to come for you, and then you rampage further. It's quite interesting. And your other options get Chaos Warriors of Khorne. These are very solid units here. It wouldn't be a bad thing to build them. Plus, you can then get Cultists. Bloodletters of Khorne, also pretty solid unit. I found Garrison best. It's up to you. You start out with Scarbrand here. He's got a half-decent army. Got an army to fight here. However, before you do much else, and before you move, let's talk about the skulls. So, as you can see, you collect skulls from buildings, trials, events, kills, raised settlements, skull piles, technology, and unholy manifestations. You use it for events, settlements, technology, and the skull throne. The skull throne is kind of interesting. I didn't really like it particularly myself. I know it's very powerful, but I never really used it that much, if that makes sense. It helps if you're rampaging deep in enemy territory. Otherwise, that's basically what it's for. If you use it for 2,000 skulls, which is a lot of skulls, because you don't generate that much except from battles or events, you get 25% movement range. You also get income bonus from post-battle loot. This is really how you make money as Khorne faction. As you attack and fight battles, you'll make more money. So you tend to want to activate Skull Throne when you're either enemies are invading you and you need the money, or you're invading the enemies and you just want to keep your conquests, keep the money rolling in. You definitely need the money due to how Khorne gets kind of reinforcing bonus armies. They're paid for. You also get a ability to summon units in battle, which is nice, and a blood host, which are the reinforcing armies. You get +2 units on creation. So at the start of the game, you start with 5,000 skulls. Probably worth activating Skull Throne because you're actually going to be fighting and conquering things. To send it out, cool little animation, and those bonuses apply for 10 turns. Now, if we, for example, fought this battle, we'll just quick auto-resolve it here because it's on normal. As you see after the battle, we got a reward here. You get a fair amount of money, you get experience, and you get skulls. And this is one of the main ways you're going to get skulls. But as you can see, we spent 2,000, and really we just got a bonus to 88. You also have another choice here to reap captives, get more skulls, devour captives for the replenishment, or offer as tribute. Early on, you're probably going to want to reap captives, except when you want to rebuild up your army. And now we get a hero here, and this is a Blood Reaper. Khorne's heroes, by and large, are mainly combat heroes. Like, all their stuff gives increased weapon strength, basically. They're pretty simple use of heroes for Khorne. Basically, maybe get training, but otherwise just throw it all into combat. Think combat all the time. This is probably the most Total War of the Total War factions in the game. It's all about violence and conquering. But the reason I'm actually showing you this is because as soon as you do this, it turns out you get skulls from missions. I found I got more skulls from missions than any other thing. Thankfully, there's an overabundance in some ways of missions in this game, so it's very easy to get. Then you're going to want to train troops because your next turn you're going to want to go and invade these guys. However, you could train them here, or you could go into... The Khorne faction has some different stances here. You can do combat trials, which get you skulls per unit, but you take attrition, and you get XP. This is really good if you're doing nothing, or you just need a little bit more skulls. The cool thing here is this demonic portal. It makes you immune to most attrition, gives you replenishment and global recruitment, but it doesn't disable your movement distance, so you can use it while moving around. Which I found very neat. You could theoretically attack and take this on your first turn without building up your army. I find building up the army just preserves your units so you don't have too many casualties. As usual for lords, excuse me, you tend to want to take Route Marcher first. Now, because Khorne is all about combat, you're really going to want to focus heavily into Blood Feast here to get the casualty replenishment so you can keep fighting. Obviously, once this becomes unlocked at level 13, probably worth getting all of those. Special note, this one here gives an additional +3 units on Blood Host creation. If you've offered skulls to the Skull Throne, you get 5. And it builds up. Restless Fury is great. You win a battle, you get more movement. If you play Total Warhammer 2, You'll know, especially at the end there, that when they added the Beast Minotaurs, he could fight, then move, then fight, then move, then fight. It's similar. It's not the same in the sense that you can refresh your movement distance, but there's lots of bonuses towards getting movement distance after battles, which is interesting. The next thing to look at is tech, so let's cover that. So how you get technology for out of the 8 different spots for Khorne is you pay skulls, which makes skulls both vitally important for offerings, colonization, and tech, which means if you start running out of skulls, you're going to stall out. Basically, the more skulls you get, the better off it's going to be. Now, since that's the case, I recommend your first tech be Skulls for the Skull Throne. Gives you 20 skulls per turn, worse relations with everyone else. Since it's costing 300, it'll pay off in a handful of turns, 20 or so turns, which means the sooner you get it, the better. And in general, anything that gives you increased skulls is usually a good thing, just because I found you need a lot of skulls, especially early to mid game. Late game, I had an excess. These are locked, each category, behind researching tech in the previous category. So just be aware that you have to research 3, then you unlock these 3, 3, 3, 3. So let's highlight some important ones. Skull for the Skull Throne, I recommend just because of the passive gain of skulls. Up here, you've got Spread Rage, which gives corruption in all your provinces, and it increases your chance to automatically colonize ruined regions in provinces at turn start. So this is pretty unique to Khorne in the sense that if there are ruined regions in the same ruined provinces in the same regions, so for example, each kind of region province here has 4 settlements, and you'll automatically, just from the capital building, have a chance to colonize the neighboring ones. So if this is a ruin, which you want to ruin this one by and large, you would have a chance to colonize it afterwards every turn. So any techs that increase that are usually pretty good. This will get you 5% more there. And all of these are pretty solid, whichever ones you want to take. I think probably the best ones are either additional movement range after raising a settlement, helping you kind of keep attacking, keep conquering really fast, or skull harvesting, because it gives you post-battle loot, and you're going to be fighting lots of battles as this faction. They are not a faction that really just wants to sit around and do nothing. Although they are really good on defense, as I mentioned. It's kind of odd. And bit of raiding down here is nice with a 50% income for raiding, but why raid when you can conquer usually? That's just my personal preference. If you're struggling with money, this is a pretty good tech to get. In the second category, oops, my cat just arrived. Sorry if you hear any odd noises on the mic. I found failure in battle to be pretty solid. It reduces your attrition due to bloodthirst, and we'll get into that later. Any reduction to attrition is usually a very good thing. War leaders here gives your lords recruit rank +2. Again, just giving you stronger, better lords for fighting battles with. When and if you're fighting the Slaneshi factions, consider you start at war with the major one, you're probably going to be fighting them. Grab this tech. The additional weapon strength and leadership is just really handy. I never really do much sacking in this game, so I wouldn't take this tech myself. But if you need money and you like to sack and then occupy or raise later, this is a very powerful one. I found war tributes, of course, to be very good. Look at it, plus 10% income. You don't make a lot of money from buildings, so anything increasing that is always a solid thing. And up here, Sounds of War is very solid in the sense that it decreases Skull Throne costs, saving you skulls, and allows you to get additional uses of Summoned from Beyond, which gives you a Bloodletter unit. So I found it interesting that this pillar seems to almost be better than the first one. The third one here, you got another bonus skulls per turn. So get that when you can. It pays off pretty quickly. Pays off in 13 turns-ish. Over here, Pride to Continue. Blood Hosts, 1 turn to additional Bloodthirst attrition immunity is really nice. You're going to lose your Blood Hosts mainly due to attrition or battle. So reducing that is always a nice thing. Skulls collected from skull piles. Again, solid. More skull gain, the better. This one is a nice one for Perfect Vigor and Unbreakable. I didn't find it game breaking or really a huge benefit in my game, but it's up to you. Skull Reaper, this is a nice one for movement and attack damage for all units in Blood Hosts. Blood Hosts are going to be used a fair amount in your campaign if you play it right. So strengthening them, reducing the attrition and stuff on them, all really good. This one is a very interesting one. Relentless Rage. Entities cannot die while the ability is active. This just makes your armies that much harder for the enemies to wipe out. Basically, each unit within each entity, I guess they're using. We'll go with their term. Each entity. So if you in a unit, so if you had 100 men in a unit, you'd have 100 entities. And this prevents the entities from dying while the ability is active, which means they fight on because each entity has its own, like, as you lose health, entities die before the whole unit collapses. This strengthened that immensely. And this one, +1 on Blood Hosts on creation. Again, very solid if you're using Blood Hosts. Further down, skulls gained from kills. Always good. Additional range on Skull Cannon is pretty much the Khorne faction's artillery. It's pretty nice. It allows you to force the enemies to come to you rather than you charging into them, which is quite nice. This one's good if you're using Minotaurs. This one is pretty interesting. It gives +8 melee attack and defense to a unit. You stick it on a hero or a lord, and they just get that much stronger. I didn't find this one a huge benefit in my campaign. 50% fire resistance. That is the cat, everybody, that noise. This would help if you're fighting Teach factions because they have a lot of fire stuff. Denying the Warped, additional casualty replenishment for the Bloodletters of Khorne. They're kind of a basic unit. They're not bad. Almost none of Khorne's units are bad, really. This just allows you to have them and keep them topped up in terms of health. I found by the time I got here, I was kind of moving away from using them, except as a secondary, like, reinforcing army. So if this came earlier, it would be a really great tech. This one's nice. Again, another decrease to Skull Throne. Additional summon a unit in combat. This one, Vanguard deployment. If you use Vanguard deployment, it's great. Otherwise, don't get it. Down here, more skulls. Chance of additional Bloodthirster unit on creation of Blood Host, which is good. Too hateful to die. Casualty replenishment +5 is good all the time. Probably would be the first one I snag here in this category. Maybe skulls from skull piles. It's really up to you. This one, Way of Wrath. Take this if you're going like Total War. You're going to fight and conquer everybody. Otherwise, I honestly would avoid this one just because this is going to trigger wars against everybody. 40% faction relations plus the 10 we lost in the first tech area. It's good. The 15 weapon strength is really powerful, but you have to balance it with it if you want war. Could be a really good late game tech, like before the final battle. It'd be, of course, beneficial to grab it then, just to buff your army even more. Wrathful Slaughter. This is really nice because Khorne doesn't really get magic. This gets an ability for your armies to use that is a large melee magic attack. It's really kind of weird, Khorne's resistance to magic, but that's kind of his design. Over down here, this is solid missile resistance. Snag that. Upkeep, take this. I found Khorne struggles a bit with upkeep costs due to the random fluctuations in the amount of units you have in battle. Movement range for Blood Hosts, it's nice. I didn't find it unbelievably useful, mainly because Blood Hosts maybe last 2 battles, and they never seem to get ahead of my actual armies. Additional unit, take it. It's good. Blood Hosts, you can get like all told like 10 more units in your armies. It's really powerful. Again, another summon, cheaper skulls cost. Deny them life. Good if you stick it on a really powerful hero or lord you're going to be doing a lot of melee combat with. It makes them considerably stronger. It's really nice. Ward save on Bloodthirster units. Good if you're using Bloodthirsters. Otherwise, don't snag it. 4 ward save is very powerful though. Okay, cat has finally stopped trying to get my attention. Dragon Slayers here. Missile resistance while fighting Cathay. don't take this if you're not fighting Cathay. You could probably go most of the game without ever fighting them. But if your rampaging conquest brings you that way, by all means snag it. It will help. Good versus Kislev, good versus Teach. Good if you're fighting other Khornes, good if you're fighting ogres, good if you're fighting humans, good if you're fighting Nurgles. Basically, this is the how to fight other factions pillar. So obviously adapt to what you're using. I will make a note that snagging the Nurg destroyers down here and getting the reduced chance of plague spreading is probably one of the best ones to snag, even if you're not necessarily fighting Nurgle at the time, because Nurgle's always spreading plagues everywhere. This will help control that. And the final one, let's go over this. Wound recovery time for all characters. Very good if you have several immortal lords, but really powerful if you have a lot of immortal heroes, more than lords. Recruitment duration, repel the honor list. This is really nice if you're doing ambushes. So if you're on the defensive, this is very powerful. Khorne's really good on defense. Again, leadership size while defending. Oddly enough, Pillar of Honor, kind of interesting. Honor and blood bonus. If you're using blood letters, use it. Vigor loss during siege battles. It's okay. I'm not a huge thing of it. And then down here, Reaper of Ages. Get more blood reapers and get them at a higher level is very nice. Sorry that was exhausting to go through, but since Khorne plays kind of interesting, some of the bonuses are not immensely obvious at first glance. So we're going to jump forward a turn or so here so that we can attack the other settlement, and you can see blood hosts. Okay, here we are, turn forward. So we've recruited units, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so this is where we can get into one of the other mechanics, bloodlettings. So Khorne factions have bloodlettings. As you get battle victories, you get bonuses. So if you're at this level, growth, upkeep, casualty replenishment, corruption, global recruitment time. Then if you go up, the bonuses increase. So if you fight a lot of battles, you can get some crazy upkeep, crazy growth, crazy casualty replenishment, considering it's on all your armies, corruption, and global recruitment duration. Again, incentivizing you to basically be constantly fighting somebody somewhere in the world for some reason. Or no reason, because you're following Khorne, which is fighting all the time. So it's really quite useful. If you go all the way down and you have no victories, though, you get a negative growth and melee attack in all provinces. So you want to keep that up. We know we can win this, so just auto-resolving the heck out of it. Now we have a choice after taking a settlement. We can occupy it, but this is important. It has a skull cost to occupy. Most factions you can occupy for free after battles, not so much Khorne. Remember, at the start, you only had 5,000 skulls, and we sent away some, which means we could theoretically occupy this province, but then we couldn't occupy any until we get another 2,500 or so skulls. Sacking, of course, is the same. If you sack, it's good. I don't really recommend sacking that much with Khorne unless you need the money. Instead, you want to pick these last two options most of the time. I would, however, make a note that occupying capital settlements, so like the big 6 or 7 or 8 cities in a province, is worth grabbing, and raising everything else. Because remember, it spreads within that area if there's ruins. So as long as you have one settlement there, it'll spread to all the other ones. I found it within 10 turns it would spread at most, basically. It's a % per turn, so it's kind of random. And that too, when it spreads, it costs no skulls. So colonizing costs skulls, otherwise doesn't cost skulls. And this is important because if you raise a province, skull for the skulls thrown, you get a flat 1,000 skulls. So if you raise 3 settlements, you have enough to colonize another one, or occupy rather. Colonizing also has a similar cost. And the final option, which we're going to take here, is blood for the blood god. Skulls for the skull throne, blood for the blood god. It's kind of Khorne's motto. Blooded, you get a blood host. You can't recruit exchange units, and it takes damage over times, but its survival can be extended by fighting battles. It's not entirely clear from the description, but you only start taking damage over time if they haven't won a battle in like the last 3 or 4 turns, which is why the tech that adds an additional turn to them taking damage is so useful. The lack of replenishment type penalties does hurt, though, in the sense that blood hosts similar to Slanesh's armies, basically, our jet reinforcing armies, are basically just sacrificial units. You raise one of these, you use it in 1-2 battles, and then it dies off, and you get rid of it. So we're going to do this here. Also, it's some nice replenishment. So as you can see, Scarbrand moved away. But remember, because we get movement range from raising settlements, he can now move. And this is where having this other stance near Demonic Portal is important, because you get the movement range. So you take, raise a settlement, get movement speed, swap into this replenishment stance, and then you can keep moving forward. It's very powerful. So this is the Blood Host, as you'll see. It's got additional movement range, cheaper upkeep, can't replenishment, and you see the penalties here. Okay? 5 units on creation. You can up that with the text and other stuff. Sated Thirst tells you how long you've got until you take damage from the Bloodthirst problem. It's different than Bloodletting, so just pay attention. When it says Bloodthirst, it's a different thing. Now, this army, the first turn cannot move. This is important. I wish it could move on the first turn. It would make rampaging and conquering even easier, but it can't. On the next turn, you can move it, and I tend to just kind of run it around with whoever the lord was that created it. Now, the cool thing is, actually, let's go over the negative thing first. Negative thing is, it does cost upkeep. So if you have several blood hosts, and it's pretty easy to stack them, I think I had 7 running around at once, you can suddenly see your income just plummet by several thousand gold easily. Thankfully, when the army is destroyed, you get it back. Duh. It is important to note this, because if you're not going to fight a battle with the blood host, say you raised it by accident, or you used it to conquer a settlement at the edge of the map and there's nowhere to go, disband it. Don't keep it around. It'll save you a lot in upkeep money. The cool thing is you can have multiple blood hosts, and in fact, a blood host can create other blood hosts. So if we move this here and we were able to take it with just the blood host, we could raise a second one. And so we'd have a very damaged blood host and a new one. And those we could send off to fight again and get another one. Just beware of the upkeep cost. It hurts. Plus, if you're raising blood armies, you're not getting skulls. So just be aware that that is the downside. But it does allow you to raise a minor settlement, get an army, and then go after a major well-defended settlement much easier than basically all the factions except for probably Slanesh. You can just raise an army whenever he wants, basically. Side note here, the blood host, their bloodthirst, their bloodletting, right, where they take damage if they haven't fought in a while, does not count on blood hosts that are not the starting army of the battle. So, for example, if we were sieging this settlement with Scarbrand, and then we used the Gore Crushers here, the blood host, to reinforce Scarbrand in the battle, the blood host would not gain that bloodthirst type bonus. You have to actually win the battle as it is your main army. So that means if it's accompanying an army, you probably want to start the siege or the battle with the blood host and reinforce with your normal lords. Kind of a flip from how you would use it with almost any other faction summoned army. Just important to note, which limits the amount of blood hosts you can have in an area without them starting to take attrition. That is the limiting mechanic there. Now, let's touch upon Unholy Manifestations, because that's one of the last major things we need to hit here. Unholy Manifestations, obviously, as you get corruption in the world, you unlock new ones. And the final ones here are kind of amazing. You can basically just raise a settlement for 10,000 skulls, which is kind of awesome. It's really, really quite fun. Slaughtering Incarnate, skulls gained from kills goes up. Yeah, it's good. You just don't get a ton of skulls from kills usually. You get them more for raising. This one is amazing though. Call of Battle, plus 50 campaign movement speed. Your things all of a sudden get rocket ships, rocket boots or something. They just rocket around the map, kill battles, move, fight another battle. You can take like 2 or 3 settlements in a turn if you raise them using this. But, however, the first one is actually a very important one called Eternal War. Basically, if I select an army and I click on it, and then I do perform, an army attacks it. You can constantly be fighting using this. There is a cooldown period, I will note. But then we can say win the battle. And you can use this on your blood hosts to get the blood hosts from suffering attrition. So you can kind of manage it a little bit like that, but the cooldown penalty hurts. But then you can get skulls, replenishment, or captives. It's not an amazingly powerful army. So I tended to use it more when I was low on cash or just needed a little bit more skulls. But it does give you battles. But you have to wait 15 turns to use it again. So my recommendation is every 15 turns, use it, basically. You're all about fighting. Literally, this faction is all about fighting. You want to fight all the time. So let's talk buildings. Actually, you know what? Let's actually not do buildings yet, because we're going to jump forward to a save about midway through one of my campaigns. Well, a little bit sooner than midway, just so you can see where you want to expand, and then we can talk buildings there. Okay, here we are. So this is about 57 turns into the game. I marked this point in my game because this was the point where I really started to snowball. Not that I haven't already kind of snowballed for this point of game. I've wiped out the major Slaanesh faction, and I'm in the process of taking out several Nurgles and others. However, it is important to note, if you look at a lot of my provinces here, the public order is very low. Khorne has some issues keeping his provinces from revolting on him. That's pretty intentional by the designers. First off, you've got the corruption penalty. But unless basically you're the only chaos god in the province, you're probably going to have rebellion issues. And sad to say, the buildings... I thought I built one of them. Oh, the buildings that give you public order, you have to build in order to have really anything stable. Oh, I guess I didn't build any in these. Your provinces tend to revolt on you. That's fine to a large degree, because if you put a garrison building, a level on your level 3 minor settlements, they can tend to squash rebellions on their own. Larger settlements, same thing, throw a garrison in there, and then you can just have the revolts happen pretty continuously. You don't really have any income penalties while the province is revolting as Khorne, and since you get skulls and tons of money from winning battles, you kind of want the revolts. However, it is nice to have some stable areas. So at least in your starting region of Infernus, I would make an effort to keep public order positive, which isn't really that hard. I really didn't have to do anything, just had corruption. And as you can see, the corruption gives control, bonus, and charge, which is really nice. This means if someone invades your provinces, you are amazingly good on defense as Khorne. I don't get it. If I was designing this faction, I would not have designed them that way. I guess it's to help you if you lose your armies on offense. As we said, there's this really interesting set of buildings here. This one gives corruptions if enemies enter your land. It's very nice, especially in your capital. In your minor settlement, however, it turns into this building, which is increased chance to colonize, income, and attrition. And if an enemy is in your province, you make money. That is the biggest difference between the major and minor settlements. Other than that, it's basically the other infrastructures are good. This gives public order. If you want public order, you may not. It's cool in the sense that, and this, thinking about it, I think I've come to a conclusion right now. The reason it gives public control when enemies are in your provinces is, first off, you want them invading so you can fight battles, but also so while they're invading, you don't have to deal with rebellions. I imagine that's why it exists. Probably stick like one in every huge region, because then it'll give you the controls. And then if someone does invade, you won't have to deal with a revolt. Otherwise, you'll be dealing with a revolt, which is kind of what you want. This one right here, again, income from post loot, battle loots. Stick it where you're going to be fighting a lot of battles, like on the coastal provinces where you might be invaded by Kislev, Norska, or any of those people. Throw it there. First off, it'll help replenish your armies that are fighting, and it'll make you more money. Plus, it gives some income. Considering you only have 3 buildings that really give you income, other than your army buildings, is pretty good. Build trophy halls. places, basically. Build them where mostly I stuck one in basically every settlement, plus 50 income fully maxed out, lower enemy leaderships, and generates own income. It's not a lot. Khorne doesn't make a ton of money from peace, but at war, it helps you at peacetime to keep up your income so you can fight wars. Again, Warpstone Locust, if you see my other guides, you'll know that I mentioned that having a chance of removing a trait from visiting the Realm of Chaos plus 50, you stick it in a provincial capital settlement, gets rid of those traits really, really fast in case for some reason you fail a Realms mission and want to try and re-enter a different one. Over here, Garrison, I recommend you pretty much build it where it is. Khorne's units are really good since you know they'll take attrition invading your lands, assuming you've built the building. Garrison, attrition, you can usually win. Over here, we've got the creatures. Warhounds, Furies, Fleshhounds, Gore Beasts. Gore Beasts, I found Gore Beast Chariots, sorry. Pretty good. I found Fleshhounds better than Warhounds. Kind of up to you. Chaos Furies, you only really need them if you're fighting other flying factions. So all the Chaos Gods have Furies, basically. I think it's only Teach that has... Oh, Teach and Nurgle have some other flying ones, in which case you want at least a unit or two of Furies to fight. I found Furies to be useful basically the whole game. They're not very strong in combat, but what they are nice is that if you're fighting siege battles and trying to take walls, you can send Furies in while you're assaulting from a ladder, and you can just have a force concentration on that part of the wall and take out units a lot faster than if the units climb the ladders and then fight. You can kind of attack them from two sides on their own walls. That was my big use of Furies, really. Also, if you're fighting Cathay, and they have any of their flying war machines, you need Furies really to fight those as Khorne, since you don't have missiles really as Khorne. You're basically melee. Over here, Chaos Warriors of Khorne. This is probably, in my opinion, your meat and potatoes unit, your main combat unit for a lot of the game. They're solid. They use axes. They can beat most infantry in a one-on-one fight, except elite tier infantry. And low infantry, they tend to tear through. Honestly, I think they should have a rating of Meat Shield because they do a great job of bogging down the enemy, but I guess they're too good to be a Meat Shield. Also, it unlocks your Cultists. Cultists are great because they increase mobility. Stick it in your army, get the bonuses. Remember what I said about Rocket Boots? It gives Khorne's factions Rocket Boots. Up here, you get Chaos Warriors with Halabards and dual weapons. Again, good, another solid infantry unit. I found I liked the Chaos Warriors better, mainly because they were shielded. Armored and shielded, I found, was a little bit more useful than just armored, even though the Halabards are really useful. Over here, Bloodletters. Remember what I was saying about Bloodletters not being unbelievably amazing? They're not terrible, and you can get them buffed through text. The higher version, Exalted Bloodletters, I found to be better. They have flaming weapons. There's no vampires really in the game right now. There kind of is, but you're not going to really fight them. That would help a lot if you ended up fighting them. Plus, this unlocks Spawn of Khorne, which are, again, spawn units pretty solid. Over here, Blood Shrines. Didn't use them the most in the game, but I liked the Skull Cannons. Plus, recruit ranks as you go through it. Up here, Blood Crushers, Cav. I recommend you always take like 2 units of cavalry in your armies, just so that you can do flanking and chasing archers and stuff. They're solid units. Higher, you get even better ones. Blood Crushers, Skull Crushers. I tend to take Skull Crushers. Plus 3 recruitment rank on your units, all the better. Over here, you've got your Minotaurs. I didn't use them as much as I probably should have. They're solid units. They hit hard. They hurt hard. They hurt hard. That was terrible. They do a lot of damage to the enemies. Anti-infantry all the way. Plus, they have... Oops, it's not letting me get to them. They inspire fear, basically. Highest letters, even more Minotaurs. You get Bloodthirsters. Bloodthirsters are probably worth getting. They're kind of an upgrade to the Harpies. I like the Harpies better for the purpose of flying because they had more units. This thing, though, is a single unit. It hits hard, it's powerful, it's anti-large, it's armor-piercing, causes terror, and is on fire. What can I say? It sounds really awesome. And it's pretty good. Really good to drop on the middle of enemy armies or on walls or just fly over the walls. Over here, this is rather interesting for Khorne. This is basically another defensive building, kind of. It provides spell resistance to your armies and recruitment capacity. So the recruitment allows you to get your armies in the field faster, right? Makes sense. The spell resistance, I honestly think this is in just so that Teach doesn't destroy Khorne. The faction most likely to be using spells, Teach. This gives you resistance against them if they're attacking. And the final part is you get the Soul Grinder. Soul Grinders are really good units, basically, no matter who has them. Khorne's a little bit more combat oriented than the others, and generally solid. And then, of course, your garrisons. And that's basically it. Can't build the higher ones. So in your capital building, try not to fill it up with basic military. Try to use advanced. That's kind of it. I will note that this building is exclusive to your big settlements, and this one is a different variant. Those are just minor things to note. In terms of expansion, and we'll just cover this at the end because it makes sense. From Infernus, you probably are going to head down to take the Brass Glacier first because you're nearby. I would probably raise this one and raise a Blood Host. It is up to you. You theoretically could colonize it, but you are using pretty precious skulls. If you take the Blood Host or the skulls, next one you want to take is Death Axe Monolith here. And when I tried it, you really want to colonize this one. It sounds so strange, but I found if I didn't, this Khornate faction here and down here, these guys kind of race in and fill it, and then they kind of control the whole coastline. And they serve as a nice buffer, but one of your missions is to unite the province, which will get you skulls. So I recommend colonizing that one, and then continuing on fighting your way up through here, which are all factions you're at war with, or it can be at war with easily. And then up here, you're going to have Nurgle factions at the start. I think you start as non-aggression pact with the ones up here. If you don't, you can attack them, wipe them out. You're going to be fighting on multiple fronts as Khorne for quite a while. So not having another enemy might be a smart move. It's up to you. You can also expand over to here. I found this to be a bit of a mess over here. It was very hard to keep this land stable because you have Nurgle corruption and stuff, as well as fighting wars. Had a lot of rebellions in this area. You may too. It's worth invading, but you might not want to colonize. It'd probably be better just to raise it for the skulls. The downside is the other Chaos factions will race in and recolonize. On the other hand, that's more skulls for you later. After that, I recommend your next move is probably, at that point, you're going to have rifts, and you can do rifts. I've started to hit the kind of strategy of ignoring the first rift or going in and doing the Slaanesh rift and making tons of money and lord upgrades off of losing to one of the gates. Either way, your next move by and large should be to come over here and kill the main Slaaneshi faction. If you see my Slaanesh guide, you'll know they start up in this province, Palace of Ruins, and they tend to expand and take all of this. Khorne completely crushes them. Your units outclass theirs in basically every other way. Your base garrison can kill units when they attack with a full army. It's kind of pathetic. You send Scarbrand up there, you raise a Blood Host. It's got Chaos Warriors, Bloodletters. It's a massacre. It was extraordinarily easy to kill them. These Blood Crushers just made it even worse. Chased them, ran them down, conquered it all, and slowly removing the corruption. It is important to note they'll probably have a settlement or two down here, so you can't just go straight to their capital and then leave. You actually have to go around here and wipe them out, and they tend to run away and attack from the other direction. Just pay attention. After that, the Nurgle factions declared war on me because I was conquering everybody. Oops, I'm Khorne. Proceed to smash them. Once you get to about where I am here, and I expanded more here, you're pretty all set. I never got invaded by sea through here at all until I got down here, at which point you can stabilize and make what little money you can. But the crushing the front to just one rather than fighting Slaanesh in the west and another faction in the east, Getting rid of Slanesh made things a lot easier. I was rich, I was powerful, I could just fight, raise a blood host, and just keep pushing outwards. I wiped out the Teach faction and the Nurgle faction by turn one. I think it was 97, 98, around 100. And then all I had to do was either go for the souls, or I could have kept conquering and wiping out the other factions at that rate. I chose to do the skulls because I had to finish the campaign for you guys. I think that's pretty much it for Khorne. We've covered a lot of it. This Skulls for the Skulls Throne, don't use it too often and use it properly. Some people just want to keep clicking the button, but those skulls are valuable for colonizing. You got to colonize at least one in an area, really. So go for the capital, and it spreads very quickly through the lands. Most of this, I think I only had the capital up here, the capital down here, and here. And as you see, they all colonized. And I think they did it in like 4 or 5 turns. So that's about it. You don't have magic, which makes this faction easier, but you have a lot of melee bonuses and stuff. So sorry this guide ran a little bit long. Hopefully it's helpful. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you had, like, subscribe, all that, please. And I will see you in another guide or a Let's Play. Bye for now.